what some of you like to describe as showers of blessing. Anyway, it's time for Mind, Body, and Soul. I am Denise Dennis Walu, and it is still the sunny side and number one station for talk, 92.3 Nigeria Info. Now, I did tell you earlier that today's conversation is centered around first aid. Okay? And we're talking about it because oftentimes it's been discovered that when there is an emergency situation, a lot of people around a person do not necessarily know the next line of action. The most frequent occurrence is that of resorting to prayers when someone, starts shaking or someone was involved in an accident, as opposed to having them do several other things other than prayers. Now, this is in no way trying to rule out the fact that prayers are good, and for some people, prayer does a lot of wonders for them. After all, the Holy Book says prayer is the key, prayer is the key, prayer is the master key. Not the Holy Book, a songwriter said prayer is the master key. However, on a more practical and realistic term, you don't know this person's faith. And maybe the person fainted, or maybe the person is gasping for breath, or maybe it was a cut, something that happens maybe in an office environment, on the highway, on your street. What should be the first thing done? And that's why some people have said there's something called first aid. So I will leave somebody who specializes in all of these things and trains people in all of these things to tell us what should be done so that we don't have to lose people that would otherwise have been saved if only we were better aware of what should be our first line of action in cases of emergency. In the studio with me is Mr. Izoma Godwin. He is the Disaster Management Officer, Nigerian Red Cross Society, River State. Good afternoon to you and welcome.
Good afternoon. You're welcome.
Okay, so let us dive right into it. Now, this may seem like everybody should know what it means. However, I do not like to take things for granted and assume. So let us start with defining what first aid is. Then we can move on to what it entails, and then we can look at practical situations of first things that can be done when someone is in an emergency, especially for those around the person. Now, what the person can even do for his or herself so that the thing doesn't get worse. So over to you. First of all, what is first aid?
All right, thank you very much. First aid has changed dimension from what people used to know it to be. First aid, by my own definition, is an immediate assistance given to the ill, someone that is ill, to the injured, and those affected by the impact of emergency or disaster before further treatment or care. That's what first aid is all about. Immediate and assistance given to someone that is ill or injured or those affected by the impact of emergency or disaster.
Okay, so now this immediate doesn't have to do with a particular location.
At all.
Anywhere. So whether it's in the church or even in the hospital.
Anywhere
at all. As long as it happens there. Even if it's in an office environment.
Exactly.
That is what should be done.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So what does first aid entail, and who is it a professional that should be giving first aid, or anybody can give first aid, and what does it entail?
Well, any person can give first aid, but we have professionals called the first aiders. These are the persons trained to give first aid. So by rendering first aid by the first aider, there are different things altogether from anyone giving first aid. When you are trained to give first aid, you are called a first aider.
A first aider, okay.
Yes. And when you are a first aider, it then means the person has the technical skill to give this first aid, so that the person he's giving this first aid will have his or her life being preserved. And the injury or the situation that the person is suffering from, he will have quick recovery at the end of the situation, and the person's life will be saved. That's why when first aid is being given by the first aider, it is quite different. It's another ball game when any person either trained that are not trained when they give first aid, because the way we handle the injured can also make somebody to lose his life if the person is not trained on manual handling.
Okay.
That is why those that are responsible, those that give this first aid, when we call them first aider, they are the people that are being trained. They are skillful. They have the technical know-how. They have the methodology to follow to actually render these first aid services to those that are injured or the casualties.
Okay. I understand you correctly. I'm sure this first aiders are either medical professionals or people that have been trained in medical profession or something.
Actually, it's not all medical professionals are first aiders.
Oh, okay.
Yes. If some doctors come to us to learn first aid.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Interesting.
It's quite different. For some of the medical practitioners, some of them also come back to study basic life support to know how to administer the CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You know, the doctors, they are always in the health facilities, but the first aiders, like as I said, immediate assistance. It can be anywhere. It can be in the bush. The doctor cannot go to the bush to render first aid. They wait for us to bring to them.
You never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So, for the benefit of this conversation, yeah. Okay, now let me ask this question before we go to this part. This first aiders you're talking about, are they everywhere? Are they in health facilities? Are they everywhere? Or you call on them and they show up?
Well, the first aiders may be everywhere because we actually go to some companies and some institutions to train them on how to render first aid. And it is also, some of our members also work in some of these companies, some of these institutions and organizations. They can also render first aid. So they are found everywhere.
Okay. So they can be found everywhere. Let's assume that they are not in a particular location and there is an emergency. I think this is where this conversation centers more on.
Okay.
And there are individuals like me. You see me here, I'm on the microphone. I don't have any business with scissors or any or whatever. And somebody in my colleague is shouting, help, 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 and all of that. And everybody in this office is running up and down, probably do not know what to do. So what is that training for an average Nigerian who just wants to know basic first aid? Or are there things you can tell us in course of this conversation that we have at the back of our minds? So if things like that happen, we know what to do at first.
Yes, there is a training for any organizational member, every staff. Although it is constitutional that every organization should have their staff being trained in the first aid skill, so that anytime emergency occurs, they can now respond to those emergencies. It can occur at any place, even in your home. So in a family, at least one or two persons should have the skill of first aid, so that whenever you cannot tell, it's an emergency, it's sudden. It doesn't ring bell that I'm coming. No. So somebody among them can know what to do and render the services to the person to make sure that the life of that person is being preserved. Okay.
Now that you have said in the home, I know you know what I'm about to talk about now. I think growing up, when we were learning certain subjects, I think it's health science or something. Health science, yeah. That was the first time I heard of a first aid box. And some of us went to some schools that actually had a school clinic.
Yeah.
So when it was time for practical, they took us to the school clinic and said, "Nurse, come, bring the first aid box. Let's show these children what a first aid box is." and then they brought the first aid box and they opened it. So these are the basic things. Every place should have this first aid box in case of emergency. Now, I don't know if it is still practical these days. I don't know if it is still something you train people to have, but let's say that it is still practical. Let's talk about what a first aid box is.
Okay, a first aid box is actually a box containing some first aid materials which are being used to manage the situations of casualties, injured persons and sick persons anytime it may occur. Now, as I said earlier, if you are a first aider like myself now, I don't have any scissors in my bag, I don't have anything, it does not mean that I cannot render first aid. First aiders are good to make improvise.
Oh, wow.
First aiders are good making improvise, using any material they have or they see available at that particular time to manage situations. So we must not be carrying first aid box along or anywhere we are going, no. Except there are special programs that we are going that requires us to go with the first aid box. Otherwise, if I'm going on my private business, I need not to be going along with the first aid box. And that does not stop me to render first aid to whosoever that I want to render first aid to, because I can make improvise.
Now, about those people that are not first aiders.
Not have known that, ask for help, and those that knew it came to do it. We have from those that knows what to do and they come to do it well, they have also do something.
What if you're trying to reach out to the people that know what to do and they are rich?
There's no. Sorry, there is no.
Okay,
at least they call you to come for assistance. It's also a faith. Yeah.
Okay. Now, one sense of the box.
They are very numerous. Like you mentioned, scissors, bandage. The bandage will have different types, like the triangular bandage, which is the most important material to all first aiders, is the triangular bandage. Because with the triangular bandage, you can use it for 10 different uses. So then we have the roller bandages too. They are also there. They have the plaster, the adhesive plaster, the gauze, and the cotton wool. Presently now using the cotton wool with the gauze, so that soak enough blood and they cannot stick to the injury. And we no longer see the injury directly. So these are the KOS, the Macintosh, the cellophane, and glue protection. So and face masks. So these are the safety things, those things that we need to have in our first aid box.
Okay, and do we have a first aid box? Where is it recommended to have?
In every organization, in every offices, a first aid box is supposed to be there.
Apart from offices, everywhere.
Yes, even the drivers, they have the first aid box in their vehicle in case of any emergency on the road.
Have I ever seen a first aid box in a vehicle before?
Yes, check well. There are first
commercial
aid
vehicles?
Yes, they're supposed to. They're supposed to. That's statutorily. They're supposed to have.
By dropping your question disaster management for the Nigerians, around how Nigerians have dealt with that. What we usually see when there are emergencies, health emergencies, is prayers. I mean, the other day, someone on my street walked to a corner and said, "Shake," and people shout, "Jesus, pray," and hold pen. Yeah, they took the person to, I don't know, they didn't take the person anywhere. Their pod, what they were protecting themselves, and the next thing they were praying again. Like I said, this is not to say that is not good. However, I believe that in some real life situations, it leads to what can be prayed for. You said immediate first aid is necessary. So let's move on to something. What should be the immediate thing to do?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me comment on the first one you talk about, the scenario of somebody shaking and people start to pour water. I will also come back to the fainting. It's actually assumed that the person has a seizure, either convulsion or epileptic what the person is suffering from. And when you get people like that, so as first aid, what we need to do is to get the person from falling into any dangerous object.
Any dangerous object? Okay.
When I say dangerous object, water is also a dangerous object, because you should also get the person from inside the gutter so that the person will not be drowned. Because if there are waters in the gutter, the person will be drowned. Any sharp object that can injure such a person, you guard the person against it, because it is a seizure. Until the seizure stops, then the person should be cleaned. Clean the person's body. When you see that after the seizure, the person will fall asleep. Yes, after the seizure, the person will fall asleep. It is at that particular time the person should arrange for the evacuation of that casualty to the health facility. Now let's come back to the fainting. What is fainting actually? Fainting is just a brief loss of consciousness. Fainting is a brief loss of consciousness, and that is why you see some people, when they saw somebody fainted, they pour water, some pray and clap hands, for the fact that it is a brief loss. The person will come back to his or her senses after a while. That is mild fainting. But when in a severe case, if that person is not being managed properly, the person will run to shock. And that's a secondary condition of it. And when the person runs to shock, not properly managed or not managed, the person may run to coma. You can see what is actually coming closer to that person. So when somebody faints, as first aiders, what we need to do is to place the fainted person in a recovery position. There's a position we call recovery position. Wow. A very comfortable position that will allow the person's airways to be open, and the person's we have his mouth being forwarded, so that if there is any fluid in the person's mouth, it will drain out, and the person's stability will be maintained. It is called a recovery position. By placing that person in a recovery position, the person's airways will be open, he will get balance, and if there is anything that will cause choking, for the fact that the person's mouth is being flew forward, the fluids in the mouth will just drain out quietly, and the person will regain his or herself.
Okay, now because we are live, I'm sure you can see yourself. I don't know if you can describe what's the recovery position. Describe it in such a way that those that are watching live can see it, and those that are listening can imagine it. Is that possible?
It may not order be possible, because that's a practical demonstration. Had it been there is somebody that I can use to show them on how to do it, I will. It's just that the person will lie the person down as if the person wants to sleep. One of the hand will be placed in an angle 90, and the chin of the hand will be on the person's hand, the fingers, so that as if it's on a pillow.
Oh, okay,
so that,
okay.
Yes,
and then that sleeping position.
Yes, the leg being crossed. When the person now is being placed in that recovery position, you see that part of the person's chest will be up the ground. It will not. The two chests will not be on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, and the person's stability is being maintained, so that the person cannot roll forward or backward. Then, like as I said, the jaw will be moved forward, so that the airways will be open. You can see the tracker. Some people call it Adam's apple or the Eve apple. I don't know the one. You can see it being raised up to show that the airways are being open, and you see that the person gets ventilation and breathes well, and within a short period the person will be recovered.
Okay, so now the water we keep pouring people that faint, does it have any effect on them?
Yeah, the water, actually.
I've seen people pour
Yes.
sprinkle water.
Yes.
I've seen people try to hit the person's leg.
Yes.
That's under the feet.
Yeah, that when hitting under the feet is trying to get the person's consciousness back. They are trying to get the person's consciousness back. And the pouring the water too is also sending a kind of shock to that person. But it is not advisable, because pouring that water, the water may get into the person's nose and the person sniff the water. The person now will go to secondary condition, choking.
Whoa.
So that is why first aiders don't pour water. So the best practice for that is to place the casualty in a recovery position. That's all. And the person will get his or herself.
So after placing the person in the recovery position, what
you
next?
arrange for evacuation,
okay,
or to any of the health facility, because the person must recover.
Okay, now let me say this. What I notice for people that have fainted, after the person recovers, the person just goes back home or goes back to their duties. No further examination. Nobody's taking anybody to the hospital. You know, like you see in films. Wow, what happened to me? Ah, you fainted. Ah, okay. So people, oh, thank you. Where are you going to? I'm going to my house. And they just let the person go.
Actually, it is not advisable. After the person must have recovered, the person has not fully recovered, because something prompted that person to faint. So first aiders will ask the person, that's referring the person to any health facility, or they can advise, go to any health facility to find out actually what was wrong, so that further fainting will be stopped, to stop further fainting.
Okay, now let's move from fainting. So we've talked fainting, we've talked the seizures, which could be by virtue of epilepsy, or what's the other one you mentioned? It could be just a seizure. What about people that have complained of shortness of breath? I can't breathe. It could be, okay, let's say asthma.
Attack. Okay.
Or, okay, let's start with asthma. Then my chest. The one people say heart attack. Okay. Or my head, or something.
All right. Let us talk about asthma. Somebody being asthmatic. We all know that when somebody completely complains they're having a short breath, and you observe, you can ask the person, are you asthmatic? It's in a severe case, the person may not be talking, may not listen to you. You can search the person's pocket by tapping to check if there are this Ventolin in their pocket. So that's
the inhaler.
In the inhaler, you look for it. Once you see it, you will know, because every asthmatic patient actually and always goes with the inhaler. So once you tap and you saw the inhaler, you know that the person is asthmatic. You just use it to administer to the person, and the person will recover. So that's for the asthmatic patients.
Well, what if the person did not carry inhaler?
If you ask the person when it is on their mind, the person maybe see how to place the person to sit or to lean. Always, if you do the other thing also, maybe arranging for this evacuation, because the inhaler may come timely or it may not come. So you should not be waiting that the inhaler must come. So you look for a way to make sure that the person's life is being preserved.
Okay, so what about asthma? What about just
attack? Okay. If somebody is having a heart attack, most times you can also see this by having the person holding his or her chest, because that's a very crushing pain at the chest. You see the person as if he wants to hold that pain. This pain, if not being managed, will radiate to the jaw, even to the shoulder of the person. So when somebody is having a heart attack, the best way of doing or having saving the person's life is to also lean the casualty on anything, even to anybody's. Then the person should not sit down, because it will not be relieved. Heart attack, you can see the person down, but the person must lean on something else. With some minutes, you see the person being Most of the times, because this accident, these sicknesses, they don't ring bell, you may not know that you have them. If you are with the first aid box and you have something like aspirin, you can give the person to chew. But it's not in every first aid box that you will see aspirin, because it's not encouraging. You don't know who is also having ulcer. And you give aspirin instead of helping the person, you also push the person to another problem. So that's why we don't even encourage them to give this aspirin, except the person is conscious to tell you the state of his or her health, that you can also do that before you take the person to the hospital. And upon reaching the hospital, you must report that this is what you have done to the doctor, so that the doctor takes care of the remaining part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you must say, I did that. Okay.
Just like this diabetes, that everybody is just running from sugar. Every human being needs sugar. Yes, every human being needs sugar. And the worst part of it is the low blood sugar. That's the worst. So if you are running from sugar, you can see that that's the worst part of it. So if somebody is diabetic, it is, though the doctor will diagnose to know whether it's low blood sugar or the high blood sugar. Then we face aiders. We don't do that. We don't have any instrument to check whether the person is having high blood sugar or the low blood sugar. What we do, if we come across people like that, is to give sugar. Yes, what we do is to give sugar. If the casualty or the you will call the person patient, we don't call them patient because we are not doctors to treat. Doctors treat patients, so we manage situations. So what we actually do is to give sugar, 5 cubes of sugar, or you can give Fanta or to drink. Then if it is a high sugar level of the diabetes, what this sugar will do is that it will stabilize the patient for 2 good hours. So within which the first aider must have taken the person to any health facility around and report that I have given sugar, and the doctors take over. Now, if it is a low blood sugar, giving sugar, it then means that you have even actually solved the person's case by giving sugar, boosting the person's sugar level. So that's actually how we give the first aid to the diabetic patients. Now, let me tell you, guess me, sometimes you see that there is an accident. Instead of people to look for a way, see somebody bleeding, instead of people to look for a way. This one you are talking of prayer is even better. Instead of that, videoing, snapping, sending on their share, and that's all they can do. It is wrong. Please, we should change our mind. We should our ways. Somebody on accident line, let's assume the person is bleeding. The most important thing to do is to make sure that bleeding is being arrested. Whether you have any first aid material within the environment, the person must have something to use to prevent the blood from rushing out of the person. And by so doing, you have stopped or arrested the bleeding, and that the person will also run to shock, that we'll talk about. And the person's life is at stake. Then if the person gets to the hospital, let's assume that the blood remaining can sustain the person to the hospital. You will see that in this case, the doctor will say the person has lost a lot of blood and start to require for another blood to infuse in the person. So please, when we see people like that, we should look for something to do to make sure that we preserve their life.
Okay, so what can be done in an accident scene?
Okay, now let me take it holistically. Now, in a scene of an accident, what we need to do, first and foremost, is to talk about your safety, the first aider safety. Like myself, I talk about my safety first. Now, when I'm talking about my safety, I will look at what actually is the problem. I will check the scene. We call it scene assessment. Look at around the area. What can be dangerous to me? What is there any hazard around this area that can also hamper my own life? Because I'll talk about my life first. For me, if I'm going to respond to this person, if there is any, it is upon or my duty either to remove this danger from the casualty or remove the casualty from the danger. Then, having done that, I will be safe to also respond to that person. The people around, all those onlookers, will also be safe, because some of them, they may not even know when they will also trample on that assessment. The next is the casualties assessment. That's assessing the casualty itself. Find the first thing, check for the person's airways if it is open or not. Check for the person's response if the person is conscious of himself and the environment. Having done that, then you check if the person is breathing or not breathing. If the person is breathing, you place in a recovery position, as I said. If the person is not breathing, then you go to further to give artificial respiration. Or we call it CPR. CPR means cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation is telling us that when somebody is unconscious and is not breathing, it does not actually entail that the person is dead, that the person may be alive. So when you perform this CPR, you will revive the person, because the CPR now that small thing you will do. Let's say for let me mention one of them. When I say chest compression, you have to, if it's an adult, chest compress. Give a compression of the person's chest for 30 good times. Placing your hand between the casualty's two breasts. Look at the sternum and you press. Place your hand with two hands, you chest compress at least 1/3 of the person's heart for an adult for 30 good times. When you are doing this, you are reviving the person's heart. We are pushing the heart to function as usual, the normal way it used to function. Then when we talk about pulmonary has something to do with the lungs. So to make sure that the lungs start to function as usual, what we need to do is to give 2 rescue breaths. 2 rescue breaths. By then you pitch the person's nursery, the casualty's nursery, open the casualty's mouth, open the airway, and you open your own mouth wide, although safety first. When I say safety, you may use the face mask to give this ventilation. Or you can create a barrier. Let's assume that the person is not with the first aid box, like as I said before, that you make an improvisation. Look for any cellophane around there and make an opening. Place. It will create a barrier between the casualty's mouth and the first aider's mouth. Although, if you also feel it is not safe for you, presently now, it is not compulsory that you must give the artificial respiration or the rescue breath. Then you continue with the 30 chest compression, you check. You can see that having done this little thing, the person whom people said is dead can now come back to life. 2022 flood. I met such a thing at Ahoda East while going to Omok. So a boy was placed by the side of the road. And that question, they said the boy is drowned. And everybody left the boy to his fate because they felt the boy is dead. So performing this small thing that I told you here, the boy sneezed and came to life and was taken to hospital. And they were asking me, what did I do? Some people thought it's a magic. It's not magical. It's because when one is being trained and you are doing what you know how to do and you do it well, there is confidence because you know what you are doing. Thank you.
Okay. Wow, this has been a lot. So what if the person is bleeding?
If the person is bleeding, like I said before, the blood will be flowing out of the blood vessels. So what the first aider need to do is to make use of the bandages, any of the bandages. Let's assume there is no bandage. There are women around. You see some of them with scaffold. That's the hair tie. It can be used as a bandage to make sure that you bandage the surface of the wound. Once you bandage, compress, raise the affected area up above the heart level. It will slow the flow of blood, and by so doing, the blood will stop flowing, and you also take to the hospital. It does not mean that the bandages or the materials must be there. If you can see a rope, you can also do that. Mm-hmm. Anything can be used to manage situations. Is if actually the person is trained and know what to do, and he will manage it.
Okay. So CPR for someone who drowned, And CPR is sometimes in an accident situation when the person is not breathing.
Yeah.
Okay, now sometimes these accidents can be really, really deep in such a way that a sharp object could get into any part of the person's body. Should you remove the object or leave the object there?
If the object is embedded on the person's body, you don't remove. Because if you remove, the flow of blood will be much. So we leave it there as we say that. What we do is to get enough parts placed by the two sides of the object, and you bandage and take the person to the hospital. Yeah. That's the first aid for it.
Okay, I'm going to open the phone lines now. I am sure a lot of people have a lot of questions. I wish for this CPR thing, you could come back and demonstrate further. But then let's hear the questions from some listeners. Now you have known what to do in some cases. At least these are the frequent occurrences we have amongst ourselves. 0817 923 0002 0817 923 0002. We also have 0817 923 0003. Remember, I mentioned that we are live on Twitter. Twitter handle is @NigeriaInfoPH, and Facebook page is Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. I've been having this conversation with Mr. Izoma Godwin. He is Disaster Management Officer for Nigerian Red Cross Society Rivers. So the message here says, did you please ask the guests in the house, in a situation where you encounter an asthma patient who is already in a critical condition and there is no inhaler, what do you do? That's number one. Okay. Number two, in case of snake bites, what do you do when you don't even know what species of snake beats the person?
Okay. In case of an asthmatic person, and according to you, you say it's very critical. If you say that's another doctor, you arrange for immediate evacuation of the casualty to the hospital, especially when the inhaler is not there. Then for snake bite, that's a very simple thing, please, that we should do. You know, when the snake bites, like now, the person is saying he doesn't know the species of the snake. Now, when you watch at the casualty and the person says he has a snake bite, to an unconscious one, they may not tell you anything. But you look at the person's body, if you do your assessment proper, you will see two dots on the person's body. When you see the two dots and there are small blood on the two dots, you will know that it is a snake bite. Then what we need to do is to encourage the casualty to be stable, not to panic, not to talk, and not to move the affected area. Then when you did not move the affected area, the next thing you have to do is to make sure that the venom, that's the poison from the snake, will actually remains there. It cannot move. And for the fact that the person is not talking, is not panicking, it will just remain there. Then you have to clean the injury, the surface of the point where the snake bites with soda, soap, anything that is around, and you take the person to the hospital. That's just all. The venom remains there. But once the person starts to shout, snake, the venom immediately goes to the bloodstream, straight to the heart. And
some people used to suck the...
it's not advisable for we facilitators. We don't suck. Do you want to drink the venom? So we don't suck. This is actually what we do.
All right, Abiola, oh dear. Abiola was on the line. Abiola, please, if you can, call back. Now, sometimes distance may be a problem.
Yes.
What if the medical facility around where the incident happened is a very long distance away? What happens?
Yes, what you said is a very correct thing. You know, years ago, I think during one governor in Rivers State here, the emergency medical services ambulances all over, everywhere. These are for the purpose of things like this so that they can convey. But people too, these days, having proactive minds can also help for the evacuation of casualties to the hospital, you can ask for the assistant to evacuate. And I know when people see their fellow human being in the critical conditions, so they volunteer. And let me use this opportunity also to ask all these agencies, even the government, to assist the Red Cross in things like this. Having an operational vehicles, ambulance, and so on, it will be of help.
All right, someone says, good afternoon, good afternoon to the first aid analyst. In the event of a burn, what should be administered as first aid? This is gospel from when I was going to ask.
Okay.
A fire, burns. And then I was also going to ask about electrocution as well.
Okay. I'm here for you.
So the thing is that we have just about 4 minutes. So if you think if you can answer these two questions in this 4 minutes.
Okay. If about burns, the case of burns, the first thing we need to do is to stop the burning sensation. How do we stop the burning sensation? Use a tapeworm water. That's ordinary normal temperature water to apply on the burnt area for at least 10 good minutes. For at least 10 good minutes. Once the burning sensation has stopped, you cover the burnt area and take the person to the hospital. That's just the first aid for that. And the best material for burnt cases is the cellophane.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
normal
the best material. Yes, normal nylon, waterproof, especially the ones that are very neat. That's the best because it will keep the injured or the burnt area moist to the hospital and the doctor continue.
What about electric shock?
For electric shock, the best thing we need to do is to cut off the current. You can go to the switch. We are leading to that and off the current. So that's what we do. You call for help too. You can call for help. If you have any emergency number in a very serious situation that you cannot get,
like high tension,
where you can, yes, you call for emergency number and explain. They will actually cut off the current from that area, and you take the person to the hospital if it's beyond. And if the person is still conscious, like as we said, look for milk, give to the person, place in a recovery position. Recovery position can be placed in an ambulance en route to the hospital. In a very severe case, too, you can continue CPR if it calls to having a CPR service.
Wow, this has been a lot. I'm so sorry. Time is already. This is something we should be discussing for maybe 3 hours, and we just had a crash course on what can. I think we should be having more of this conversation so that it's a reminder, and like you said, you're encouraging people to learn first aid because it's going to be very, very important in even in the church, Seth. Yes. Even in the church, when the pastor is praying, let them also.
Actually.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Izoma Godwin, Disaster Management Officer, Nigeria Red Cross Society, for your time. We really do appreciate you. Your final words as we round off.
The skill of first aid so that we can help humanity. It can be you. It can be anyone else. So let us encourage ourselves to learn the skill. That's my last
All right, and that brings us to the end of the sunny side today. I'll be back here tomorrow, 12 noon through to 3 p.m. Follow us on all social media handles, Twitter at Nigeria Info PH, Facebook page, Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. If you missed any of our conversations, remember you can always go to our social media handles and watch them again. Follow us on Threads and Instagram at NigeriaInfoFM_PH. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at _Denise_Dennis. That's DeniseDennis. Follow my Facebook page, Denise Dennis. Follow my Facebook account, Denise Dennis Wallo. Rivers Today comes up at 3 o'clock, and thereafter, Hard Facts with Constant Mega. So stay tuned to us.
It's all talk and more talk on Nigerians.